welcome to the latest installment in our UXDX Online series. I hope you're as excited as I am for the talks that we have this evening. But before we jump into those, I'd like to give a really quick introduction to UXDX and why we host these sessions. So at UXDX, we have this motto that the world is full of bad software. And what I mean by that is not necessarily software that doesn't work, but software that's clunky and difficult to use. So I always use the example of a banking app, where I have a digital first native banking app, and I also have an app from a very traditional bank. And while they technically do the same thing, they're miles apart in terms of the user friendliness and which one I therefore go for. And the issue there, I don't think it's down to lack of skill or lack of motivation by people, but it's down to the environments that people are working in. And our mission at UXDX is to help companies build an environment that can't build bad software, because it's down to your processes and your flows, not your people and their skill set. And how we try to achieve this mission is to help companies shift away from waterfall or water scrum fall, which is more common, projects that lock in scopes too early, to truly autonomous empowered product teams who can iterate and work their way towards better working products. Now, that's really easy to say and really hard to do in practice because it involves changing nearly everything around the organization. And that's where the talks come in. So nobody's going to cover the entire changing the way of working, but we ask people to share a little bit about how they're modernizing and improving their ways of working in their part of the product flow. So hopefully as you're listening, you can think of some questions that you might want to ask. And please do write those questions on whichever platform you're watching this on. And we'll leave some, or the speakers will leave some time at the end of their talk, so we can ask those questions to them. Well, that's enough about me. You're not here to listen to me talk. So I'd like to introduce our first speaker for this evening, Niyata Gupta, who's the product design lead for Netflix. And Niyata will be talking about designing better decisions, business acumen for product impact. So I'd like to welcome Niyata to the stage. Over to you.
Awesome. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Niyati. And today I'm going to talk about something that we don't discuss enough in design conversations. It's not about craft, it's not about tooling, and it's not about AI prompts, but it's about decision quality. Because increasingly, that's where the impact is won or lost. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most teams don't ship the wrong designs, they ship the wrong decisions. I've seen like beautifully crafted, deeply researched work fail, not because UI was flawed, but because we were either solving for the wrong problem, optimizing for the wrong outcome, or just choosing the wrong bets. And the execution was fine, but the decision wasn't. And AI is kind of making it worse. With AI, we can generate infinite polished variations in moments. Execution is faster, options multiply. But the judgment, that's where the game kind of is rigged. AI doesn't tell us what the right problem is to solve. The judgment and the decision quality, if they are weak, then the bad decisions can scale faster, especially in the world of AI. And I've learned this the hard way. My career has moved from craft to strategy to leadership. And at one point, I also became a PM. I worked as a PM at Google for a couple of years because I thought that's where the influence lived. But what I realized was it wasn't about the title, it was about the how of decisions. And working across multiple different kind of teams, different products, high pressure, high growth, 0 to 1 products, stalled roadmaps, and breakthrough launches, I've started to notice a pattern that is consistent. When decisions succeed or fail, it's rarely random. It's one of these three elements at play. Either the success wasn't defined correctly, or we are not aligned in the success, learning wasn't sequenced, or tensions or trade-offs weren't explicit. And these are the three levers now that I look for whenever I think these three as steps. These are to me like structural conditions. If one of them is weak, the decision quality drops. So let's get into into each of them separately, and I'll talk about where it all started. And I'll start with defining success. Um, and I'll tell each of these as a moment in time where that was a real moment in my personal journey where I evolved these. So the first one goes back to Google Travel. This was long time ago, but I started noticing a pattern. We were Design was pitching bigger cross journey ideas uh, to leadership, and none of them were making to the roadmap. They were coherent ideas that were making the design and experience more coherent and good, but they were not making to the roadmap. Only incremental, small vertical optimizations were. Those that ship fast, those that moved numbers. And as a designer, that was frustrating because the product felt fragmented to me and I couldn't quite articulate why. And that's when I noticed that we were not misaligned on design. The intent was there, but we were misaligned on what the success meant. Travel was a journey, but we were optimizing as a business for individual vertical clicks, not journey engagement. It wasn't like design was pitching more of cross journey movement, like looking at travel as a whole, but individual verticals were optimizing for individual clicks. And the uncomfortable truth was I wasn't equipped enough to make a shift. I didn't have access to metrics dashboard. I didn't know what metrics were actually moving and why they were moving. I couldn't argue with the language in the room because design was talking about usability and roadmap was talking about business impact, and I couldn't bridge the gap really. So I stopped trying to win the design debates. We stopped pitching the designs. We started, in fact, learning how the system works. I got access to all the dashboards, sat with data scientists to understand, what's moving, what do we care about, and what actually mattered. But the real shift didn't happen when I understood the business, but it happened when I tried to influence it. It was about reframing success. So, one concrete example, instead of optimizing for hotel click through rates or flight click through rate, we pushed for cross journey engagement. Travel as a whole, should we look at engagement as a journey? And that's what we started pitching. We stopped pitching for polish. We stopped started pitching for systemic change and the goal or the success that we were optimizing for. And that's where the shift happens. Once the success was defined at the journey level, everything changed. We were able to pitch things like unified navigation, and it made to the roadmap after years of advocating for it because it makes strategic sense. It made sense to the business now. It was driving a shared outcome. We weren't pitching polish, we were just strengthening the system. And that's where design was invited early. We were embedded early. Metrics were reframed to system level. Design was shaping priorities, and we were basically in the room because we were talking the same language. We were moving towards a shared goal and success, and everything we were pitching suddenly made sense to leadership. And it was not just we were debating each other, but we were debating whether it made sense with the shared success or not. I do want to caveat though that metrics without judgment can create dark patterns. Metrics is a whole topic that I can talk about and give a different talk on. But here I do want to touch upon that I'm not saying that we should be completely metrics driven, because without thinking about usability, trust, and responsibility, if we just optimize for metrics, that creates dark patterns. And that's not what we want. But we want to create a meaningful metric system that drives success responsibly. And that is shared across different functions, and we have a shared understanding of it. So we know where we're going as a group. And that's where you will see a lot of conversations in the room also l- lead to less debate. But I wanted to emphasize that it's not just about the metrics, it's about guardrails are important. I'll move on to the next one. Once you have defined success, the next come is like when you come up with solutions, are you optimizing for design or accelerating learning or optimizing for learning? This hit me hard at Netflix. When I came into Netflix, I was like this designer who always felt like, I come up with really thoughtful solutions. I look into problems and provide and present really thoughtful solutions. And when I'm presenting my thoughtful solutions, people will come to me and ask, "What's the hypothesis?" And it always felt like critique. It's like, "What do you mean by what's the hypothesis?" And underlying, they were trying to understand what are we trying to learn with the solution. This is Reed's quote that we kind of always refer to at Netflix. Is like, we make informed decisions, informed bets, and test them quickly. So what happened was, when I worked on Netflix, a shift happened. I initially used to think my job was to come up with solutions, have the answers, defend my solution with good rationale. But then I shifted to framing my solutions as learning bets, inviting discovery. How can we learn together and find clarity? And I suddenly saw the room shift. We were not debating the designs of solution. Is this the right design? Is this the right solution? But we were debating, is this the right thing to learn? And how can we learn it? How can we get to clarity faster? And the egos in the room dropped. And when I say hypothesis, I want to make it a little more concrete so people know it. They look something like that. If we do this, we expect this change because. So if we reduce friction on step two, drop off should increase because user won't stall at the decision points. And here the example says, like, is about metrics, but it could be about user behavior change. It could be about a lot of other things. But this makes it really concrete. What are you trying to learn and what your assumptions are? It exposes those. So you're not debating like the exact solution or design, but you're trying to learn to get to that ideal success state. Again, caveat here, you might have 100 things, 100 unknowns that you want to get clarity on. That does not mean you need to test them all. Testing everything is noise, but you need to identify the riskiest assumption and the one that you think is the most critical for us to make the decision and get to the clarity faster. Uh, Creating that discipline to clarity, not an experimentation theater. You don't want to have like 100 things you're testing, but being very strategic about uh, getting to that clarity faster, not always just shipping faster. Awesome. Let's move on to the last and the most uh, place where I think there's the biggest tension in the room and most of the debates happen, is structuring tension. This was back in Google Meet during the pandemic. So fun. I became a PM. I decided to become PM during the pandemic at Google Meet, which was the most demanding probably area. The product was exploding at the time. The demand for the product was exploding. Everybody was going online and running meetings on Google Meet. So our roadmap was overloaded. We had requests coming in from internal, external audience. Design had this vision. So there were things coming from like security standpoint, parity, collaboration, reliability, UX polish, and everything had merit. Everything had advocates. The problem wasn't idea, it was about the competing forces. How do we prioritize which one to get to? And everything seems like the right thing to build, but we have limited resources. And there was this one meeting where we debated for 45 minutes whether we should be doing background blur versus grid view. And it was a feature argument, but to be honest, it wasn't. Every role was trying to protect something. Engineering was trying to protect stability and reliability. Product was trying to protect growth. Design was trying to protect coherence and usability. Leadership was trying to protect differentiation. And no one was wrong. But the weren't visible. We were debating features still, but we were not debating what are we optimizing for? What are the tensions? So after the meeting, we went back and instead of asking what features are better, we started asking what spectrum are we actually debating? Is it about the short term lift or long term advantage? Is it about velocity or technical depth, parity or differentiation? Once we named the tensions, the conversation changed. It wasn't about the features, it was about what were we optimizing for, or what were the tensions that we can map out on. And the debate changed. We were not debating features, we were mapping the forces and choosing very consciously. So in the next meeting, we didn't bring mocks. we brought a roadmap balancing proposal. The proposal was, let's do 60% short term, 40% long term. And it is not about compromising, but it's about consciously deciding in conscious allocation, principled allocation. And then the tensions were explicit. The decision kind of was made much smoothly, because it was principled. It was based on, this is the tension that we have, but we are trying to optimize 60% this, 40% this. And that made sense to all of it. We were not debating just features anymore. And so what happened before was the tension was implicit. It felt like it was a personal debate. We were going in circular arguments, and just egos in the room were debating each other. But after we named the tensions, it was principled. It was faster alignment, stronger commitment, and we could all get behind that. uh, we trusted each other. We kind of was like, okay, we are aligned on, this is why we're prioritizing what we're prioritizing on. So I'll recap a little bit. This is where I feel, when the hard product decisions failed, usually it's one of these three things. This is the operating system that I personally have devised for myself, and I advocate in any team I work in, to implement that. Defining success to always start with. What is the shared goal? How are we defining success? Is it balanced? Is it ethical? Or is it just one-sided? Just questioning it, not just learning how the business works, but questioning it and making sure we're moving towards the right goal. The second is accelerated learning. So not just coming up with solutions to launch and shipping faster, but coming up with ideas and solutions to learn faster together. What are the assumptions? What are the risks that we will need to clarify? What are our learning goals? And creating a system and for learning them faster. And it's not just about running experiments, it's about getting to those questions and trying to find the answers for them. And the answers could be in the usability, prototype testing, data, user behavior, click behavior, or just A/B testing. And there's a lot of way you can get to that learning, but what do you need to learn, structuring that and getting to learning. And the last but not the least is structuring these tensions and trade-offs. How are we prioritizing things in the roadmap? What are the spectrum we need to debate? What are the tensions? And just naming them, putting them out there so we can talk about them, rather than them being implicit, and then it being about the egos in the room and debating the features, rather than, these are the tensions, we need to map them about. So in the world full of AI, where creation is really fast, options are infinite, your leverage comes from decision making. So if you were to go back to your team tomorrow and think about how decisions are made on your team, ask yourself, is the success clearly defined, or are we debating tactics still? Are we reducing or learning the right things, reducing the right uncertainties, or we're just shipping faster because we need to just? Or are the tensions explicit, or are we just still being very conflicting and debating and going in circles? If one of the levers is weak, that's your leadership move. Try to see if you can do one of these things, these three things, to strengthening decision quality in your team. But that's about it. Thank you so much for listening. And I think we have about 10 minutes for questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That was a great kind of example with three very specific instances and three kind of, I guess for me, I personally know the product, so it kind of adds that little bit of extra. Great. So if anybody has any questions, please write it in, as I said, on whichever platform you're on. And we already have our first question, so I'll jump in with that. So this is from Kira, who said, this is such a sharp breakdown of why hard product decisions fail. In my work with rehearsal mode, I found that even with structured tension and defined success, teams still hit that approved, then reopened wall, because the decision rights aren't locked into the rehearsal phase. Yeah, I know this one. It's the corporate version of a director giving a major blocking note 5 minutes before the curtain rises. It creates chaos. solving for that truth timing is how you actually make these design decisions. So I guess the question there is, yes, you can put in place all of that up front. Oh, well, let's structure it this way, but people still have their pet projects that they're going to push through. So how did you deal with that?
Um, that happens. And I feel like when these things are in place, I think you have some leg to talk about and push back. It's not about that you always need to push back. I do feel like first evaluate the idea that is coming in from a different leadership standpoint, understand where what lens it is coming from, and does that actually align with the three things? It is aligned with the shared goal. Does it get us to like learning faster? Does it map on one of the tensions? And if it does, it's worth talking about. It's not about like immediately rejecting or pushing back, but evaluating them against the system and then make sure, like, oh, if it does, then let's talk about it. But if it does not, you have some leg to stand on. It's like we aligned on this goal to start with. And if we are moving away from it, let's talk about why. And then do we need to rethink our goal then? And then what are the things that we are pushing? Does that still, like, does that goal still, does that success still remains the same? That's what debating, because now you had a concrete thing that everybody aligned on. If you're moving away from it, then you have a very concrete leg to push on. So I feel like it's not, and there will be instances where, industry pressure rises with the AI. Like you have to ship some things like yesterday for competitive pressure, and that's okay. Then your success is not just defined by, you know engagement there, but it's also defined by industry success, and you should bring that lens into your success. And even in the spectrum mix, I think differentiation is important or parity is important. Let's map that, and then moving forward, anything that comes in the roadmap is kind of so adjust your scales accordingly. Don't push back just without evaluating, and if you have to push back, use those pillars or levers to kind of push back, is how I have approached it personally.
Great. And in those instances, because I've been there, I've had those conversations, and you get it agreed, and then the next day somebody comes back and they've been thinking about, I've got a better argument. But do you have a final say as the PM, or what's the way that you short circuit that just never ending, back with another angle tomorrow?
Um, I've seen this work differently in different teams. Like at Netflix, we actually have a product owner. We call them informed captains, who have the final say, and they're usually engineers or PMs, but sometimes they're designers as well, depending on the project. So you have an informed captain that kind of makes the final call. And Netflix, I've seen that, but in other teams, I have seen it being a collaboration, being a PM call. But I feel like the more you guys do it as a team, and create those forums, like this is the forum, core team will come together and make the decision. If we are still not able to, I think assigning that one person who's like an informed captain, who can take everything everybody's pitching, learn different perspective, and make the final call makes sense. But I think creating those like space for those debates, and assigning roles and those relationships. This is a core team. This is a team that's input is really, really important for these. These are the four people whose input is really, really important. But this is one person who can, like, if we go to stalemate, this is who's going to make the decision.
Great. And we actually have a question that aligns with this now, coming from Fernanda. So first off, she says, thanks for such an inspiring and clear talk. But her question is, what would you say was harder to put in place of those kind of, so as you just kind of mentioned there, you had to put in place some kind of conditions that everyone agreed on. And could you share some learnings and strategies you used to get buy-in from your peers and teams?
Yeah. Let me see if I can talk about one of these three very concretely. Maybe I'll talk about, like, and I give examples so it's contextualized a little bit. I'll talk about the travel example where we're trying to define success. That was a shift. We were so optimized for individual vertical revenue and CTR, because that's a shift to think about the businesses like a cross travel journey, rethink our metrics. um, I think what we did was grounded it in concrete research that we have. Like, it was not just designed or switching it because it felt like an easier usability fix. We saw concrete data that people were doing those searches one after the other. They were going to Google search and doing hotel search, and like next day or in a couple of hours they were doing flights, and they were going back and forth. So it was a journey. It was not a linear path. And individually, like, they were thinking of just hotel search, they were just thinking they were traveling a trip, and they were looking at all these different places. And we saw it in data engagement, like engagement numbers, but we also saw it in user research. There was so many foundational research where people were talking about this. So we kind of brought that forward. So it was not one person's opinion. It was little grounded in the data and user behavior we were seeing in the past. And we kind of surfaced what was breaking down. When we think about it in silos, we were missing this, like, and we framed it as a business opportunity. It's like we were missing the cross journey. We could drive people from this product to this product very easily and actually increase the engagement there as well. um, so this was a missed business opportunity, not just a design opportunity. And that's where the unlock happened, to having a shared language to talk about. And this is my whole talk's crux, is like why business acumen is really important, is you can have that shared language that you can talk about, and it's just easier to communicate that way. So if I had to go back, it was like that shared common language, grounding it in some data or research. It's not one person's opinion. It has a little bit of a rationale behind it, and then being very clear about what you're trying to push for. It's not just, I don't agree with PM, so I want to push back. But it's just like I have a very concrete solution or metrics or success goal or tension that I'm trying to push for, and why.
I've found it helps if people are aligned on a similar KPI. I've worked in a place where I've tried to explain this is better for the business, but their bonus and everything is based on their individual siloed KPIs. So they're like, yeah, that's better for the business, it's better for the user, but this is better for me. So there can be a tension there that can be quite difficult to deal with.
It always is. And that's why I think that shared language, I understand. That's like, I feel like you also have to meet the person where they are, but it could also influence that specific KPI that you care about when we change this.
Yes. So speak their language.
Speak their language.
I guess what's just on a personal note, you mentioned you pivoted to PM, but you pivoted back. What was your rationale for both moves?
Oh, that's a question I get so many times. So my rationale for going to PM was, I mentioned, like, I felt that that's where the influence was. That's where I will be more strategic. That's where I will get to define the roadmap and define what success is. Um, but I felt like that was true, but that was a very small part of the job. The job was much bigger. It was a lot of people skills as well. It was a lot of just like managing debates. It is an unforgiving role because you're responsible and on hook for everything that you don't do. So, personally, for me, the portions I enjoyed as a PM was something I felt like I could do as a design leader as well. I could drive influence, decision making, strategy as a design leader as well, and I don't have to be a PM for it. Um, and the things I didn't enjoy actually became uniquely as a PM. So I kind of stepped back and I was like, I think something needs to change how I work as a design leader rather than me completely changing my role to drive the things that I want to and enjoy the things that I started doing more of strategy. I started doing more of driving 0 to 1 work because that's where I love and enjoy it. So I kind of stepped back and went into the design leadership role.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing all of those case studies and your experience. I think that pretty much brings us to time. So just want to thank you once again for sharing, and I hope everybody out there enjoyed it as much as I did.
Thank you.
So up next, our second speaker of the day is Ganesh Karthik Sankar, who is a product design lead at Amazon. And Ganesh will be talking about facilitating cross-functional collaboration as a UX designer. So I'd like to welcome Ganesh to the stage.
Hello, everyone.
Share your screen. We'll get started.
All right. I'm Ganesh.
And sorry, just a hide if you could click on that.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
I'll leave it up to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Ganesh Karthik Sankar. I'm a product design lead. A little bit about myself. I'm currently designing customer support experiences in Amazon. Previously, I was the founding designer for a business vertical called Saga, which stands for Software Analytics and Global Automation, in a company called Qualcomm, which is a major chip manufacturing company headquartered in California in the US. Prior to that, I was also the founding designer for a public transit agency called Sound Transit. I also worked with the likes of Bank of America. So throughout my experience, I have worked with organizations of varying UX maturity, varying structure. Some of them I've spent as a founding UX designer, which means that I had to establish collaboration and relationship from the ground up and explain to people what even UX is. So throughout this presentation, I have several examples from my experience working in each of these different organizations of varying UX maturity and structures and how to best collaborate with different stakeholder partners. For today's agenda, the first one is why collaboration matters. Why should you all listen to what I have to say? And the second one is I'm going to help you identify who all of your key stakeholders are. And the third one is now that you have identified your key stakeholders, how do you engage with them? How do you build trust with them and strengthen the partnerships? At the end of this presentation, I want to leave you all with strategies, frameworks, and artifacts that you can use to engage your partners in an effective way. Jumping right into the agenda, why does cross-functional collaboration matters? The biggest advantage is that it allows you to create impact beyond your team. As you collaborate with different teams and identify different partners, every now and then you'll come across a team who's trying to solve the same problem that you're trying to solve. So your solution could also work for them. So it allows you to create solutions that extend beyond your immediate team. Secondly, it gives you deeper context around the business and organizational goals. Like if you're designing a product, why did that product come into existence? Where does the funding for this product come from? Where does it sit in the largest scheme of things going on in that organization? Thirdly, it allows you to increase your visibility and influence across the organization. The fourth one, which I've come across a lot of time, is avoiding conflicts. Every now and then, you'll notice that a random team pops up and says that, hey, we have not been involved in this project, but we have a say in it. And they might have some incriminating information that could potentially change the entire product strategy. And that could reflect poorly on us too. So it allows you to identify such surprises early on and avoid that conflicts. And also, if you're working in a large
We appear to have lost Ganesh. Apologies for this interruption. Hopefully he will read shortly. I'm not sure if there's any way of us getting back in touch with him, unfortunately. Unfortunately he's dropped off, so hopefully he'll refresh and come back on. Apologies for the interruption. Get started again shortly. I guess if anybody wants to write in any questions now, we can get ahead of time on the questions, just as we're waiting for Ganesh to rejoin, or hopefully he'll be able to rejoin us shortly. If not, what we can do, if he doesn't join in the next 3 or 4 minutes, we'll reschedule the event or his talk so that you can watch it again another time. But hopefully it's just an issue. Maybe his computer stalled and he's just has to restart it or something. So we'll give him another minute or two to rejoin, and apologies again for the interruption. I guess while we're waiting, I'll explain. We do host major conferences in May. We have a conference in the USA coming up in New York, and also one in Berlin. And so we'll have 40 plus speakers, there'll be 500 plus attendees at these. We do workshops as well. So there's talks on stage, but also workshops. And the idea of UX/CX is, as we said, build better software. And it perfectly aligns with what Niati was saying about you're looking at all of the different tension, all of the different inputs, because it takes product, UX, design, and dev to build a holistic and great product. So that's why we're not a design conference, we're not a product conference, we're not a dev conference, we're a cross-functional conference. And so if you are interested in joining, please consider joining us there. We'll just give 1 more minute for Ganesh to try rejoin, but if not, unfortunately, what we'll do is, as I said, we'll reschedule his talk for another time. I'm not sure what issue has caused him to drop off, but hopefully everything's okay. All right, it doesn't look like Ganesh is going to rejoin us today. So I just want to thank once again Niati for sharing her case study with us, and apologies to everybody watching for the technical issues with Ganesh's stream. I'm sure he'll be able to reschedule it and we'll share it out after this. So thank you everybody for joining, and look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thank you very much.